I'm Ken Shigley, President of the State Bar of Georgia. Today is Friday, March 16th, 2012. The legislative sausage factory grinds on, and we are in, to mix metaphors, the fog of combat. A couple of things that the State Bar is involved with and concerned with. First of all, criminal justice. We are still awaiting the introduction of a committee substitute on the criminal justice bill. There are a lot of issues in play behind the scenes. Of course, we've seen in the bill that was introduced a couple of weeks ago a lot of attention to drug and mental health courts, the support services and procedures to go with that. There's been a lot of work on recalibration of different categories of offenses in property crimes, drug crimes, and so forth, whether drug crimes would be classified based on weight of substance or the number of offenses, and the amounts of property theft or damage involved in calibration of misdemeanor and felony and classes of crimes. The State Bar Criminal Justice Reform Committee met last week and went through the original bill in infinite detail and reported its discussions to the folks who are working at the Capitol on the bill. I understand that there are things in play beyond this that we just don't know how it's going to come out. So stay tuned on that. Now, last week at our State Bar Executive Committee, we went ahead and voted to endorse the Juvenile Code proposal committee substitute. The bar procedures on legislative endorsements require that under Standing Board Policy 100 that we take a vote on whether a bill is germane to the purposes of the bar, and secondly on the substance. And when we're in the middle of a legislative session, if it was impossible to vote on a proposal at the time of the last Board of Governors meeting and there's not time to wait for the next Board of Governors meeting, then the Executive Committee can act. Now, the committee substitute back up. The Juvenile Code had been in process for a long, long time. We had an extensive panel discussion about it at the August Board of Governors meeting. We were trying to work with folks to get compromises made so that we would have something that would be viable and could pass. We did not have the committee substitute with those compromises worked out in the legislature until February 23rd, after our last Board of Governors meeting on January 7th. So we didn't have the final version available at the time of the last board meeting. A couple of weeks, 3 weeks ago, on February 23rd, the committee substitute was introduced that involved a number of compromises that were needed to pass. One of them was to be able to combine the roles of attorney and guardian ad litem and CASA in the same person unless an actual conflict arises. One was to allow an oral motion for continuance on the day of a hearing rather than having to have it in writing 2 days in advance. Another was to allow a juvenile to waive representation in a delinquency proceeding after having consulted about the consequences of that waiver. Another was to allow juveniles to be held for up to 24 hours in an adult facility with sight and sound separation in counties that don't have a juvenile facility, something the Department of Juvenile Justice thought was really necessary. So a number of these compromises were worked out in the committee substitute. We distributed this information to the Board of Governors and asked for comments, some of which we received. A couple of folks actually commented during the meeting by telephone. And then we went ahead and voted in the Executive Committee with, I think, one dissenting vote to endorse the bill. Currently, it passed the House. It's over in the Senate. We don't know what's going to happen there, obviously. I understand that there are a lot of new cost estimates emerging from different departments of government that are wildly divergent from anything anybody had heard before. And we just don't know how that's going to sort out and what's going to happen in the Senate. Now, on indigent defense, Tom attended a hearing yesterday while I was out of state, and can bring us up to date on indigent defense and other things.
Great, I'll be happy to do that. Let me say that We only have 7 days left in this legislative session, and as always happens, everything converges at the last couple of days, and it surprises us all sometimes to see how things get worked out, but most often they do. We have legislation pending now on taxes, on criminal justice, on metal theft, abortion. All kinds of different issues are hanging sway right now, and somehow they will manage to get unraveled and addressed before the end of the session, which I expect to be on March 1st or somewhere, or March 29th or 30th, somewhere before the 1st of April. On indigent defense, we did have a hearing, as you know, constitutional amendment and enabling legislation passed the House last week. It was assigned to the Appropriations Committee in the Senate. A subcommittee was appointed, and that subcommittee met yesterday afternoon and heard testimony on the constitutional amendment and on the enabling legislation. That is going to be a very difficult road to hoe for us. A constitutional amendment requires a 2/3 vote. That's hard to get on motherhood and apple pie in the Senate and the House. So that's going to be a difficult chore. But thanks to many of you, we've had a lot of communication from our members to members of the House and the Senate, and we are optimistic. Representative Rich Golick did a terrific job in making the presentation and making the case for the constitutional amendment. There are varying opinions and very thoughtful opinions on both sides of that issue, and we'll just have to see how that comes out. I would expect the subcommittee and the committee to consider that bill the first of next week, and we'll know where we stand on that one. In addition to indigent defense, the international commercial arbitration revision that many believe is going to be a real spur to Georgia's participation in the global economy and economic development in this state passed the Senate several weeks ago. The House Judiciary Committee took it up yesterday morning, passed it out. Professor Doug Yarn did a very good job making the presentation, and we expect that bill to be on the floor sometime next week, and we expect that one to go to the governor's office, and that will be a very positive result of the legislative session, in my opinion. In addition to those bills, the Open Meetings, Open Records Act has passed the House. It is now in the Senate. It will be before it'll be before the full Senate Judiciary Committee on Monday afternoon. We expect that bill to get out and expect the Senate to address it before the close of the legislature, and we will end up with a revised Open Meetings, Open Records Act for this state. And finally, the Senate is taking up the budget next week. So far, we have had very good results with the budget, both the supplemental budget that passed and was adopted favorably from our standpoint, and the judicial branch's standpoint. The big budget, FY13 budget, was passed by the House last week. It's now before the Senate. I expect the Senate to take it up on by the middle of next week, so that they can go to conference and resolve differences. We are hopeful that 13 budget will include money for the Resource Center, include funding for victims of domestic violence, include funding for ICJE, and most importantly, include the $40 million recommended and approved by the House for funding of indigent defense. So it's going to be a very busy week. Don't hesitate to take a look at the website and keep up with what's going on in the legislature, and call us if there's anything we can do to assist, or if there's information you need.
And one final thing, Georgia's getting $104 million from the National Foreclosure Class Action that was brought by State Attorneys General. Nobody knows when that money is going to hit or how it's going to be allocated. But a team from the State Bar will be calling on folks after the legislative session to lobby for getting a good slice of that for Georgia Legal Services and Atlanta Legal Aid to use to help people who are affected by the foreclosure crisis and the domestic violence that is undoubtedly related to that. So we stay busy and we'll be running through the finish line. Thank you.